Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on accelerating global connectivity through evidence-based policymaking. My name is Ann Shannon Baxter, Senior Advocacy Manager on the Digital Inclusion team here at the GSMA. Over the next 45 minutes, we'll dive into the GSMA's Mobile Connectivity Index, referred to as the MCI. After brief opening remarks, we'll be hearing from the Digital Inclusion team on the latest MCI data, country performance, and how to use the online tool. We'll also have a look at the MCI's methodology with GSMA Intelligence. Next, we'll have an insightful interview with the Director General of the Malawi Communications Regulatory Authority, referred to as MACRA, who will share their firsthand experience of using the MCI to inform policy decisions in Malawi. Finally, we'll hear from the Global Digital Lead at the UN Capital Development Fund, or UNCDF, on how they leverage the MCI to guide their work and showcase the impact of evidence-based policymaking on a global scale. We're very excited you are joining us from all over the world today. Let us know where you're from, and please pop any questions into the chat function, and a member of the team will respond. To kick off, I'm pleased to introduce Mele Thiel-Gunestehe, who will provide the opening remarks. Mele, over to you.
Thank you, Ann Shannon. Hello, everyone. My name is Mele Thiel-Gunestehe, Senior Director in the GSMA's Digital Inclusion team. Today, we're talking about advancing connectivity through actions based on evidence and data so that people, industry, and society thrive. Across the world, more people are connected than ever before, and the impact on our everyday lives cannot be overstated, especially since mobile internet is the primary and often only way people go online. In India, for example, around 80% of internet users exclusively use mobile. Whether it's helping people communicate with friends or loved ones, accessing information online, or running a small business, mobile is a very powerful tool. For billions of people, however, these benefits are out of reach, and the rapid pace of technological change requires continued heavy investments in mobile broadband networks. Successfully increasing or improving mobile internet coverage, adoption, and use requires a data-driven approach. Every country has their own unique path towards digital growth, and moreover, resources and budgets are not unlimited, so we need to prioritize actions and direct efforts where most impact can be achieved based on data and evidence. Data and evidence are really key to decide on policy priorities, set clear and measurable targets, allocate budgets, measure progress, and evaluate the effectiveness of interventions across all strategies, policies, and programs aimed at advancing connectivity for all. The GSMA's Digital Inclusion team has been at the forefront of supporting governments, the mobile industry, and other stakeholders in these efforts. We gather detailed, gender disaggregated data and conduct industry-leading research on the digital divide. For example, each year we publish the State of Mobile Internet Connectivity and the Mobile Gender Gap reports, which are largely based on our consumer survey. This consumer survey looks at people's mobile use as well as barriers to mobile ownership and use, focusing on the underserved. Another critical resource is our Mobile Internet Connectivity Index, or what we call MCI. The MCI measures the performance of countries against key enablers of mobile connectivity. MCI data is freely accessible and allows for comparison, benchmarking, and evidence-based decision-making. We are very excited to announce the data has just been updated for 2023. So I want to thank our donors as well as our members and partners for making all this work possible. It is only by working together that we can truly achieve impact. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope this session will show how the MCI can be useful for you and inspire and inform our collective efforts to achieve a prosperous digital future for all.
Thank you, Mele, for setting the stage. Now, I'd like to introduce Abby Gleek, Insights Director in the Digital Inclusion team, who will unveil the newest MCI data and take us through the methodology behind the index with Harry Akihe-Bayon from GSMA Intelligence. Abby, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Anne-Shannon. Hi everyone, I'm Abby Gleek, Director of Insights in GSMA's Digital Inclusion team, and I will be sharing with you an introduction to the Mobile Connectivity Index, or the MCI. I will talk about the indicators that make up the MCI. I will share some global insights and highlights based on our latest data, and explain how you can access the online MCI tool to conduct your own analysis. The MCI measures and tracks the performance of key enablers to mobile connectivity in 173 countries. The MCI gets updated regularly, and we've just published new data for the year 2023. This means there is now data spanning 10 years starting in 2014. The data is freely accessible and downloadable through our online tool, which I will show you later in this presentation. It's our goal to provide a wide range of stakeholders with a comprehensive and up-to-date view of a country's evolving mobile connectivity landscape, highlighting where progress is made, but also where challenges need to be addressed. In other words, the MCI is a tool for evidence-based action. So let me explain the building blocks of the MCI. The MCI is built around 4 key enablers: infrastructure, affordability, consumer readiness, and content and services. These 4 enablers are comprised of a total of 32 indicators, which we've aggregated into 11 so-called dimensions. So, for example, under infrastructure, we look at 3 dimensions: network coverage, network performance, and spectrum. Each of these dimensions can be further broken down. Network coverage, for example, is measured by the indicators 2G, 3G, 4G, and 5G coverage. Similarly, under affordability, we look at data affordability, handset affordability, and taxation. Data affordability, for example, is measured by the affordability of 1 GB and 5 GB as a proportion of monthly income, including for the poorest 40% of the population. So I won't go over all of them here because of time, but I hope you get the idea, and please let us know in the chat if you have any questions so our team can answer them. The majority of indicators we measure are unique and not captured by other indices or benchmarks. So this includes indicators such as spectrum assigned in specific spectrum bands, sector-specific taxation, the gender gap in mobile ownership, and apps developed locally, for example. Each indicator is normalized to a score from 0 to 100, where 0 is the worst score and 100 the best. So in this way, scores can be aggregated at each level of the MCI and compared with other countries or regions. Next, let's look at the evolution of global scores by enabler over the past 5 years. This analysis helps us understand where we've made progress globally and where further efforts are needed. Since 2019, the affordability enabler has seen the strongest growth with a 6-point increase, followed by infrastructure with a 5-point increase, while consumer readiness and content and services saw slightly less improvement at 4 and 3-point increases respectively. Overall, infrastructure and consumer readiness now score highest across the enablers due to M&O investment in 4G and 5G network rollouts over the past 5 years, as well as improvements in both gender equality and mobile ownership. The progress we've seen is encouraging, but there is still much work to be done to ensure that everyone, everywhere, can benefit from the opportunities that mobile connectivity offers. So now let's move from the global view to look at country performance. To help with this, the MCI places countries into clusters based on the overall index scores, from lowest score to highest, discoverer, emerging, transitioner, advanced, and leader. So countries in the discoverer cluster have significant room for improvement across all enablers, while those in the leaders cluster perform well across all 4 enablers. So now let's look at the countries that score highest on the MCI in 2023 per cluster. countries from various regions are represented, with Liberia and Madagascar leading in the Discoverer cluster, and Singapore and Switzerland in the Leaders cluster. Clustering helps with setting mobile connectivity goals, as the ambition of a country in the Discoverer cluster would be to move to the next emerging cluster, rather than drawing comparisons with or having targets similar to more digitally advanced nations. Next, let's look at the most improved countries for each cluster. All these countries listed here have significantly improved their MCI scores over the past 5 years. Brazil, for example, improved by as much as 16 points on the MCI. Ethiopia by 9 points, well above the world average of 5 points during that period. Brazil, India, and Ethiopia were the countries that moved up a cluster this year, thanks to their continued improvement on the MCI. Now, the underlying reasons for the improvements of these countries may be different for each country, so let me show you one example next. What we see here is the change in scores on MCI dimensions for Ethiopia over the past 5 years. We can see significant improvements in network performance, which measures download speeds, upload speeds, and latency, mobile data affordability, and handset affordability. There has been hardly any change in scores for mobile ownership, basic skills, and local relevance, however, while the score on spectrum decreased. Moreover, Ethiopia has the opportunity to significantly improve its MCI score by further advancing gender equality. So these insights are different for every country. In India, for example, improvements on the MCI were mainly driven by network performance, gender equality, and online safety. The data shown here is just scratching the surface of what the MCI can be used for. Time permitting, we could look in much more detail at underlying indicators, trends, or country comparisons. So how can you use the MCI to generate such insights? So I will next briefly show you how to use our online MCI tool. When you go to the MCI website, this is what the interactive landing page looks like. The menu on the right allows you to navigate through the MCI data, but you can also simply click on any country in the world map. To download all MCI data in Excel, click on Data View in the menu on the right, here marked in a yellow circle. Next, you'll see a white button, Download Index Data, and once clicked, it will start downloading the Excel file. To view country data and compare country scores, you can also click on any country on the world map. So in this example, we've clicked on India. Once selected, you'll see this screen. On the left, it shows India's overall MCI score of 66.5, with scores of the 4 connectivity enablers shown below: 71.3 for infrastructure, 68.6 for affordability, etc. And to see more data, you can click on View Country Analysis, here marked in a yellow circle. Here you get a detailed breakdown of the MCI data for India, or any country that you select. The coloured circles show the connectivity enabler scores, with more detailed data underneath. You can see, for example, that India has scored lowest on consumer readiness, the blue circle followed by content and services. So to further investigate, you can click on any of the boxes, which will then show the scores of the underlying indicators. For example, if you were to select local relevance with a score of 59.4, it would show you the full scores, including on digital language support and locally developed apps per person. To perform trend analysis and country comparisons, you can click on Country Comparison at the top of your screen, here marked in a yellow circle, and you can then select any country or region and any of the indicators and compare them over the 10-year period for which we have data available. Successfully advancing mobile internet connectivity requires evidence-based action. Our Mobile Connectivity Index is an extensive free data resource that allows users to perform research, conduct benchmarking, and set evidence-based priorities. By leveraging the data, policymakers and other stakeholders can determine where to focus their efforts to improve mobile connectivity or to better understand the impact of certain interventions. The MCI can help with setting clear, actionable goals and tracking improvements over time, ensuring that policy interventions or other initiatives are both strategic and effective. So I'd now like to introduce Harry Akiye-Ballon, economist at GSMA Intelligence. The Digital Inclusion team works closely with GSMA Intelligence on the MCI, and over the past several months, Harry has been working on updating the MCI with the most recent data for 2023. Hi Harry, thanks so much for speaking with me today.
Hi, Abby. Thank you.
So, we gather data for the MCI from a number of different sources. Can you share a bit more about what these sources are?
Yes, in the MCI we use data from different sources depending on the indicators that we are trying to measure. The list of data sources is presented in the methodology document that can be found online. And the sources are GSMA Intelligence, UCLA, AppFigures, the ITU, and the UN. Once we gather the data, we then clean and process it, which involves the imputation of missing values, normalization, weighting, and aggregation. In the case of normalization, it is important because indicators have different units of measurement and ranges of variation. This means that when you see a country's MCI score or any data point, it takes a value between 0 and 100, with a higher score always indicating a stronger performance.
Great, thanks Harry. So we use different data sources and we want to make sure the data is accurate. Can you share a bit more about how we work with governments and other stakeholders to validate this data?
Yeah, we work closely with governments and mobile operators to make sure that the data that we use for each indicator is the most accurate. In that sense, regulators and operators have the opportunity to review and validate all the data that we use for the index. And many of them have done so in recent years. If there is any discrepancy between the data we gather and the government's data, then we ask for documentation that supports the new information. It can usually come from national service or from statistical offices. We then review the data, and if we find the evidence to be reliable, we then proceed to update the information for that indicator.
Great, thanks Harry. And has the MCI been externally audited?
Yes, the MCI was audited by the European Commission Joint Research Centre in 2021. And the results of the audit were that the MCI methodology is coherent and it follows well the OECD recommendations for the construction of composite indicators. Some of the recommendations were about the refinement of some of the indicators and the replacement of some proxies by more accurate variables. As a result, in 2023, the MCI methodology was improved, and we revised some of the indicators, for example, in spectrum, mobile data affordability, and taxation, and we make some improvements to that indicators. We also include a new indicator on the support of digital languages. Based on the results of the audit, we also conduct uncertainty analysis, which gives the confidence intervals of the rankings and scores of the MCI. Our results showed that the uncertainty in rankings and scores of the index is manageable.
Great, thanks Harry. And finally, our teams regularly engage governments and others on the MCI. In your conversations with governments about updating the data and methodology, what are some of the common questions you receive?
Some of the common questions that we receive from governments are about the data sources that we use and the methods that we use to process the data and to build the indicators. However, governments are mostly interested in what they can do to improve their performance in the MCI. Particularly, they want to know how the MCI can be used as a tool to design and implement policies that enhance mobile internet connectivity and bring its benefits to the overall population.
Thank you, Harry, for sharing this and for working with us to make sure the MCI is a reliable tool for our stakeholders. So, in summary, I spoke about how the MCI is built around 4 connectivity enablers, measuring 32 underlying indicators, which are, for the majority, unique compared to other indices. We also saw the top scoring countries and the best performers over the past 5 years, with special performance of Brazil, Ethiopia, and India, who progressed to the next MCI performance cluster. Every country has its own unique connectivity landscape and digital development journey, with different elements contributing to overall MCI performance. So to know more about your own country or countries of interest, I showed you how to use our free online tool at www.mobileconnectivityindex.com and how to download the data. So I'm conscious there's a lot to take in, but I hope you found this useful.
Thank you, Abby and Harry, for that insightful presentation. We hope that this has helped in showing the MCI's capabilities and its data. Now, let's shift gears to discuss how the MCI can be used in practice by governments. The Digital Inclusion team has developed guidelines for policymakers on how to use the MCI to improve mobile internet coverage, adoption, and usage. These guidelines follow a 5-step process. The first 2 steps include assessing a country's performance on the various indicators of the MCI, and then benchmarking them against regional or economic peers. This allows you to see where a country is performing well or poorly, uncovers trends over time, and see a country's performance relative to its comparators. The third step is to prioritize policy focus areas. While addressing the lowest performing metrics is important, it's also crucial to consider metrics that may have stagnated or where significant gaps exist compared to peer countries. For the areas that have then been prioritized, the 4th step is to understand the underlying causes of the metric performances. This means doing a policy review, looking at international best practices, but also having consultations with stakeholders to gain a better understanding of the MCI scores. With all of these learnings, the 5th and final step is to develop and implement policies that fit the agreed priorities. Such policies should be developed in collaboration with stakeholders and include clear, measurable targets, allowing governments to monitor progress and help inform further policy action. The guidelines include a detailed description of each of these 5 steps I've just shared with you, and we will share the guidelines to a link to the guidelines in the chat now so that you can use them at your own speed. We also provide MCI workshops in the Digital Inclusion team's priority countries, carried out in collaboration with our colleagues across the GSMA. In these workshops, we go through each of the steps as outlined in the guidelines, and then we jointly work on an action plan to improve MCI scores. We organize these workshops in partnership with a country's relevant ministry or the regulator. And because digital is such a cross-cutting issue, we encourage various ministries, agencies, as well as international and private sector partners to also be invited to those workshops. In the past, we've also done shorter virtual workshops in a regional format where multiple countries can join. And while we may not be able to meet every request for a workshop, the Digital Inclusion team is here to support and to make sure you can make the most of the MCI. Next, we'll hear about real-world examples and some case studies demonstrating the impact of using the MCI for evidence-based policymaking. I'm now delighted to introduce Eleanor Sarpong, Director of Policy and Advocacy within the Digital Inclusion team, who will be joined by MACRA's Director General, Daud Suleman. Director General Suleman will share his firsthand experience using the MCI, offering valuable insights into an MCI workshop, and how the data can inform policy decisions. Over to you, Eleanor.
Thank you, and Shannon. And it's my pleasure to be with you, Director General Daud Suleman. I'm looking forward to the questions and the answers in this session, which talks about the MCI. So you and your team participated in a workshop on the Mobile Connectivity Index. Can you share some of the key insights that stood out for you and how you found this workshop useful for improving mobile connectivity in Malawi?
No, thank you very much, Eleanor. It's a pleasure to have me here, and also for us as Malawi to share our key learnings from the workshop that we had with the colleagues from the GSMA. Malawi, we held this workshop first and foremost to ensure that a number of stakeholders are aware of what it is that as a country we are lacking and where as a country we're doing better in as far as mobile connectivity is concerned. A number of key areas really stood out as areas that we need to do some interventions in. I'll give you an example. One of the areas was the issue around taxation both on the smart devices, which affected the penetration and availability of smart surfaces that people can use, which affects our mobile connectivity. And obviously, the taxation also affects the other side, which is on the data bundle and the pricing of the data bundle. We also ran into issues around spectrum pricing and how we as a country need to remodel our spectrum pricing formulas to ensure that we are leveraging on existing operators that they can go into rural areas, but most importantly, that we as a nation should be seen as an enviable destination for new operators that would want to come in. And finally, it was the issue of local content. Malawi as a country does not have a lot of local content that has been digitized and is available online, and therefore the drive for a lot of Malawians to get online and to access content isn't there, because mostly they're consuming foreign content. And one of the key issues that came out in the workshop was that a lot of our content is not monetized, and therefore there is no incentive for local content producers and creators for them to really go at it and produce more local content. And through the workshop, we were able to identify these as some of the key gap areas that we need to start addressing, so that we can raise more content that is localized, more content that can be consumed by the locals. But as the locals are consuming this content, they need to have access to more smart devices. Therefore, the issue of lowering the price of smart devices and ensuring that the smart devices in the country are arriving at a better price point, it has been dealt with. And then finally is the issue of affordability of the connectivity, data bundles, conversations with mobile operators to reduce, to further reduce their pricing, and obviously as a government to start engaging with other neighboring countries. As you know, Malawi is a landlocked country, and we get access to the sea cables via other countries. And the workshop helped us to also fine-tune a project that we're calling the diplomatic data corridors, so that as a country we can begin to talk to other countries to give us cheaper rates for transiting of IP through their public infrastructure as we get access to the sea cables. So we took advantage of the key learnings from the workshop to see how we can include as many women as possible in the economic side of telecoms and connectivity in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, DJ Suleman. And I think you mentioned about the collaborative nature of the workshop. Based on your experience in this workshop, what are the next steps for MACRA in ensuring that the MCI can be used to enhance mobile connectivity?
It was very important for us as a regulator to come as transparent as we could before our operators and other stakeholders and our policy holder, the line ministry, so that we could look at the industry from an equal's eye viewpoint without really apportioning blame as to who has created the gap. But we should own the gaps as a collaborative exercise. And out of the workshop, it just coincides that we are also at the midterm review of our strategic plan. And this has given us an opportunity to recast our strategic plan, but at the same time, it also gave us some input into the national digitalization policy that the ministry and the government have adopted. These have given us one viewpoint that both the regulator and the operator, as well as the policy holder, is looking at. We have common gaps that we are both filling. Other gaps require policy intervention, issues of lowering taxation, issues of ensuring that we have tax incentives for new operators in the sector. Those will require policy intervention. Issues around mobile broadband networks proliferating and going into deeper rural areas. Those are issues that will require the regulator to intervene, as well as issues that require the lowering and whitelisting of other content and ensuring that local content is made available on our local networks. Those are issues that will require our operators to work on. So jointly, we are holding each other to account on an open slate, so that if each one of us really does push in our end, in the end we're going to have meaningful connectivity that has deepened in the country, and therefore will create a digital economy that favors everyone in the country, and most importantly, that it adds value to the social and economic life aspects of our people in Malawi.
Yeah, those are very ambitious plans, but I'm very sure that the MCI would be able to support you in doing that. So what advice would you have for other governments that are considering exploring the Mobile Connectivity Index? And what can you share with them about how to approach it?
Well, my biggest advice is that you cannot improve that which you cannot measure. As long as you cannot measure something, you have no idea whether you're doing bad or you're doing wrong, or whether you are stagnating. And therefore, the MCI really gives you a true picture of where you are. And therefore, it does help you to begin the process of looking at which areas you should improve. And therefore, as government being a combination of different players, all these players have a little bit of some role that they need to play together. And therefore, to collaborate and to push in the same direction, you need to have one viewpoint of where you are, where you're going, and why is it that you need to get to a point X. As the case for Malawi, we believed that with coming out clean and showing the stakeholders and the operators and everyone our status, it really did help us to open up certain conversations that were going to be tough to take up at policy level. Certain conversations about incentives would have been problematic, but because there was a collaborative and an open nature of the conversation, it did help us to take the conversations further. And I believe that those countries and those governments that are willing to improve their mobile connectivity, I think it's worthwhile engaging GSMA and learning how they come up with this MCI, so that you can see which levers you need to pull and which locks you need to close, so that you can move in the right direction. So we're in a global digital village. You cannot have your own measurement. You cannot have your own standards. We are all operating in an open internet society, and we are interconnected. And therefore, the standard that is global is a standard that all of us have to aspire to, whether you're an African government or you're a European government or you're an Asian government. The internet is the internet. It is built of bytes and bits, regardless of where you are. Therefore, the game has to be played according to the standards that are there. And as a least developing country, we see the MCI as a guiding light for us to deepen digitalization and in the process improving the lives of our people.
Thank you very much, Director General Daud Suleman, for sharing how the MCI has been a guiding light for Malawi, and to also see how it's helped in evidence-based policy making. Thank you.
Much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director General Suleman, for sharing your valuable perspective. Next, Eleanor will be joined by François Coupienne, Global Digital Lead at UNCDF. François will discuss how the UNCDF utilizes MCI data to drive evidence-based policymaking. Eleanor, back over to you.
Thanks again, Anne Shannon. Hello, François. It's good to see you.
Nice to see you, Eleanor.
So, François, I understand that the Mobile Connectivity Index is embedded into the Inclusive Digital Economy Scorecard. So how is this helping decision makers in making evidence-based policy? And as you speak through it, could you share some success stories or how notable the impact of IDES has been on digital inclusion and policies in specific countries and regions?
Oh, great. No, thank you for the question. No, you are right. I think UNCDF is leveraging, the data from the Mobile Connectivity Index in IDES really to enrich, let's say, our tools and to work with government partners in Asia, Africa, and the Pacific. But we leverage also more than just the index itself. We leverage the whole work from GSMA around the Mobile Connectivity Index. I think we participate in some workshop in Malawi together. And a great example is also the complementarity of the tool and the key impact that we can have together. As an example, I think some years ago you released, let's say, a publication mentioning that Zambia was the country with the most improvement in the last 7 years on the Mobile Connectivity Index. It was also the same for IDES. And seeing having, let's say, the same message coming from two international organizations to the Ministry of Communication and from Technology and Science in Zambia was really, a powerful. And so having these two tools that can contribute, to similar goal was really useful. So concerning maybe just a small overview of what is IDES, and that's why there is a slide, in the presentation. So the Inclusive Digital Economy Scorecard is really a strategic performance tools that really has been developed with government partners to help them track their digital transformation. So it provides a comprehensive overview of the digital transformations journey, and you see there the key building blocks and also the different dimensions that we are measuring into IDES. It was developed with government partners and also like-minded organizations like GSMA and others in order to make sure that we have, the same standards and quality standards for the tool. So how does it help our decision makers in making evidence-based policy? So maybe I will quote some of our, users of the tool in order to say how the tool has helped them in their, digital transformation journey. So the first one is in Uganda, the Ministry of ICT and National Guidance. And so what they mention is IDES is our first reference for policy development. It has guided the development of the digital transformation roadmap with all targets aligned with our IDES framework. So that's a great example of testimony of one of our partners, or really they are embedding that in their digital transformation journey. Another example is what we have done in Solomon Island with the Ministry of Aviation and Communication and Central Bank. And they say many aspects of our digital economy context are severely under-researched. And IDES filled this gap with actionable, policy-relevant data and analysis. So as a summary, so the key, how does it help? It's provide really organized and action-oriented data. And if you see on the slide, you can really see, they can go from an aggregate level, for example, from infrastructure to ICT usage and ownership, and then to some indicators like an indicators of SIM cards penetration coming from the Mobile Connectivity Index, and really be able to focus on the different level and based on their priority to see where they really need to put, let's say, some key policy action. So what are some of the success stories? And maybe I just go to a second slide we just did I think an exercise to try to understand what we have been able to achieve in the last 3 years. So IDES is implemented in 33 countries. It has been adopted by 11 countries as their measurement tool for digital transformation. And what I think is really important also, 17 draft and 10 as a policy action have been directly informed by IDES in these countries. And I think the last part of your question was concerning digital inclusion.
Yes.
What are really, I think, some success stories? And as I was mentioning before, we are trying really to put inclusion at the center of the digital, I think, discussion within our government partners. So we can take the example of Madagascar. So in Madagascar, the Ministry of Digital Economy, so it's called in French, Ministère du Développement du Numérique, recently released their Plan Stratégique du Numérique. So it's like digital economy roadmap. And they leverage IDES in order to mainstream inclusion in the Plan Stratégique du Numérique. So mainly, if you check at the Plan Stratégique du Numérique, I think we've been able to embed inclusion of women, youth, elderly, and disabled, also MSMEs, refugee and migrant, as key indicators and as key focus in the Plan Stratégique du Numérique. So that's one great example. The second one, it's also in Solomon Island. We have a specific, in IDES, we have a specific focus on women, and we have a women inclusiveness score. And the Ministry of Communication and Aviation and also the Central Bank in Solomon Island leverage the insight of IDES to inform both the National Financial Inclusion Strategy, but also to develop the first country women financial inclusion policy. And really to really broaden, let's say, access to financial service, I think, to most marginalized segments. And I'm stopping here for the first question.
Well, it's really great to see that, François, and to hear these practical examples. You know, in your experience, what are some of the familiar challenges that governments face when trying to implement insights from the scorecard? And you know, how does IDES help governments to track and measure their progress over time?
Oh, great question. I think the challenge, there are a lot of challenge. And so when we design IDES together with a government partner, we try to film some of this, I think, to challenge and respond to this challenge. The first one, I think, is a key one, and I'm sure we all face the same. It's the lack of actionable and result-oriented data for government partners. And we are working in least developed countries. So in least developed countries, it's even more a problem where data is really missing for government partners to be able to track their progress and to take, let's say, a decision. So most of the time they are taking, let's say, blind decision about what they need to do about the digital transformation. The second part is also, it's linked to the first one, it's lack of periodic data, just to make sure that on a regular basis they are able to follow the progress. Another challenge that we faced is really the lack of process, maybe tools and capacity within our government partners to measure and track progress. So it's also something that we try to, I think, provide support in order to make sure that step by step they are embedding, let's say, the tools into their process just to make sure that it's becoming their own tools. And the last one, the challenge is that most of the time inclusion is not at the center of the discussion or is not part of the discussion. So also by developing IDES, we have been, I think the objective was really to put inclusion at the center. And I think it's the same with the Mobile Connectivity Index, where you have, let's say, specific indicators about genders. So based on this challenge, what have we put in place in order to support government? So IDES is not just a scorecard of a tool with scores. It's really a toolbox for government. Mm-hmm. And we have various tools that really to help them drive the digital transformation. So the first part is, I think, the tool itself. And maybe I think what is quite unique in IDES, we are taking a learning by doing approach. So it's mean that we are collecting data with the government. So we are leveraging global data source, but there is some data that is also missing at national level. So we are working with them in order to collect data. So it's really bring them, and so it's really an opportunity to get their buy-in and to make sure that step by step these tools is becoming their own tools and that they will be embedding in their way of working in their process. So that's one of the first tools. The second tool, it's really IDES, I think, function as a central platform By collecting data, we are making sure that we not focus on one government partner that is driving digital transformation, but really, I think all the different government agencies and ministries that are involved on digital transformation. And we have really good country examples, for example, Malawi, Solomon Islands, Niger, or Uganda, where I think the whole IDES has helped, let's say, set up digital economy working group, where different government partners are meeting on a yearly basis around IDES in order to collect data and track the progress. And so I think it's really bringing, let's say, them all together. Also, another tool that we have been trying is concerning to have a community of practice. So what we would like to make sure, we don't want just to give them, let's say, an index and score. We also would like to give them best practice from other countries. And that's where I think the community is quite interesting, because we are working in 33 countries. So the objective is really to have peer learnings from these different partners in order that they learn from each other what works and what doesn't work. And we are doing that either in persons, and we met in Zambia with 17 participants from 15 countries, where really, I think, was really a whole shared session according to the main dimension of a digital economy. So the policy and regulation, infrastructure, innovation and skills and inclusion, and really learning from each other. It was quite really a tremendous success. And also the last part, what we are trying, it's called the Inclusive Digital Economy Scorecard. We put inclusive at the beginning because we really would like to focus our government in the inclusiveness part. And that's why I think the whole tool is really organized around this inclusiveness. And so as I mentioned in I think the first question, example of Madagascar, Solomon Islands and other countries of how they've been able to embed inclusion into their digital transformation journey I think is quite a good outcome.
Thanks, Francois. And for me, the last question, and in just 1 minute, what advice would you give to different stakeholders who want to use IDES for decision making?
No, great, thank you. Oh, wow, that's so. First, what I would recommend is not maybe to use one tool. I think they should use several tools, because I think one tool is not fit just for what purpose. I think it's important that they see the content of different tools, like the Mobile Connectivity Index or the Smart Africa Index, or I think there are a lot of different index, just to make sure that they can have the right tool that are in order to meet the requirements. So that's the first recommendation I would give. The second one is also to take a multidimensional approach. And sometimes that is quite complex for government partners. Most of the time they are working on their own on one topic. Here it really should be a comprehensive approach with different government partners. And the last part I would just mention is let's make sure that you bring inclusion at the center of, I think, the discussion. Just to make sure that when you are designing your policy action, I think your regulation, inclusion is really part of it. And so all what you will be performing in your country will help, let's say, decrease the digital divide.
Yeah, thank you, Francois. I think it's important to stress that, inclusion is also at the heart of the Mobile Connectivity Index. And I see that interrelation between that and the IDES as well. So thank you for your time, and thank you for showing how the MCI is embedded and practically used in IDES and in helping decision making. Thank you.
Thank you, Eleanor, and thank you for the partnership with GSMA.
Thank you.
I think it's really invaluable. Thank you.
Thank you, Eleanor and François, for that fascinating discussion.
It appears that our colleague Anne Shannon is having some connectivity issues, so I'm happy to take over from here. My name is Soheb Nanhak, and I am a policy manager at the GSMA. We wanted to thank, of course, Eleanor and François for that fascinating discussion. And as you've heard from our speakers from MACRA and UNCDF, the MCI is not just a theoretical tool. It really can be a catalyst for change. And their experiences underscore the MCI's value in shaping decisions and in expanding access to the benefits of the mobile connectivity. So thank you to all of our speakers today. And as we've seen, the path towards digital inclusion requires strong partnerships. partnerships between governments, mobile operators, and international organizations are crucial to driving progress. By working together, we can share knowledge, leverage resources, and implement effective policies that advance digital inclusion globally. We hope this webinar has illuminated the power of the MCI in evidence-based policymaking and inspired you to leverage this tool to drive digital inclusion in your own work. We encourage you to explore the data yourself at www.mobileconnectivityindex.com and to use the MCI guidelines. We look forward to seeing the progress made to advance mobile connectivity for all. Thank you for joining. Thank you very much.